Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And if you want to learn more about that, you can go to teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Bob Hankins. He's a director of engineering with more than 20 years of engineering leadership experience and product development experience. And he's built a career translating complex technical challenges into practical business outcomes uh, while also serving in executive leadership roles, including interim medical CTO CTO. So in our conversation, we're going to share his insights on bridging communication gaps between engineering and business teams, explaining technical trade-offs to executives, and helping engineers become more influential in their communication. So welcome to Teach the Geek interviews, Bob.
Thanks, Neil. Really appreciate the opportunity. This is great.
Wonderful. First question. What communication or name a communication gap you often see between technical and non-technical teams?
I think in some cases the communication gap can be associated with what the purpose of the question and the comments. What's the question of the information being shared, and what are you trying to answer? What problem are you trying to solve? So I think without understanding what's behind the ask, what decisions are you trying to help make, then it's harder to present the data and present the information so it can be used to answer the question at hand. So I think we really have to clarify what the information is being used for, how is it going to drive a decision for the business, how is it going to, where are they going to use the information to decide, and how does that make things better? So I think you really have to understand where you're going with the information so you can provide the right context, the right framework, and the right information to drive the right decision.
Yeah. When I first started giving presentations, Bob, I had to do so in front of management on a monthly basis, and those first few presentations were terrible.
Yeah.
There's no other way to say it, Bob. I'm not going to mince words. And I knew it was bad because, well, I was sweating profusely, so that probably wasn't helpful. But then I also knew it was bad because afterwards I get a whole lot of questions that I thought I had answered during the presentation. And the people in the audience, this is a CEO, CTO, CMO, C fill in the blank O, see all these C's in the audience. And they're listening to myself and other product development engineers talk about their project status. So this is a full day event because there's a number of projects going on at any given time in the organization, and I just wasn't very good at putting things in a way that they could understand. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the the outcomes of this miscommunication between technical teams and executives. What do you think it can be?
Yeah, I think you need to focus on, if the question is capital investment from the business, are they going to invest in new equipment, new machinery to launch a new product, or to make things better as far as yield improvement, or to make a volume of parts able to ship out higher at a better cost rate. You really have to understand what the problem is you're trying to address. So I think the how you present the data to answer that. You can't put it in terms of saying, look, I'm going to get 150 more parts per an hour. I'm going to get 15% increase in improvement. You have to really translate that in terms of your audience, right? So if your audience, their eyes start glazing over, they start nodding off, or they start, kind of nodding back and forth saying, I think I understand you, but I don't want to show you that I don't understand you. Um, you really have to say, okay, let me put this in terms of dollars for you, right? This is how you're going to, if you invest $15 million, it's going to help you get $30 million in Q1, or in that. Um, if you push this off for another month, then another month delay may result in 6 months in additional ramp up time because of the timing of the other issues. So I think you really have to understand the problem you're trying to help the team solve, and then put it in their terms. I think the mix of my aha moment in my education was when I went to I had my engineering degree, and then I went to get my MBA, right? And that's where I actually took the finance class twice because it didn't click. I got a decent grade in it, whatever, but I said I don't understand the checks and balances, the balance sheets, and how, I want to really understand the terms of the business, and how what I was working on connected to that. So I think anytime you can put it in terms of numbers and dollars, head count, turnaround time, speed to market, things that engineers don't primarily think of or understand what they're working on this key product or the key project. The sooner you get it out, you could capture larger market opportunity. So you really have to say, help them decide when to cut off the design and just launch what you have, because 100% is may be too late, right? You may be okay at 80%. And the more you build, the more you learn. There's continuous improvement. So don't worry about launching something perfect the first time, because you're gonna you may hold back on that communication. You may hold back in the decision the executives need to make in order to launch a product, in order to invest in capex, in order to understand whether to cancel a project or keep it going. So uh, once you understand the terms and any preparation you have before the meeting to understand what problems the executives are struggling with, and then put it in terms that they can understand or they relate to, I think helps make the conversation go a lot easier.
You mentioned cancel the project, Bob. You're bringing back some bad memories. You know that project I was telling you about, where I had to give these monthly status updates, it
Mm,
eventually was canceled. And this happened 15 plus years ago at this point, maybe close to 20 years ago. And I still think back to those times. And I wasn't very good at putting things in a way that these people could understand, and in a
right.
way that could help them make informed decisions. And I just think that even all these years later, if I was just better at doing that, maybe they'd have a product out there right now making millions of dollars. I mean, I worked in medical devices as well. So
Yeah.
I worked in spinal implants, and we had
Mm,
this orthobiologics group. And it was a new group to the organization, because up until that point, all their spinal implants were made out of, well, metal or ceramics.
mm,
And here we
mm,
are, this new group talking about human cadaver bone, making spinal implants out of that. And no one really knew about what we were doing. And then here I was getting up in front of these management types, probably don't even know what orthobiologics means. And I'm using all the jargon that I understand and people in my group understand, all four
mm.
of us. I mean, even the other engineers didn't know what we were talking about half the time. And I'm getting up there in front of the management, and I'm using all these terms, and they're not getting all these questions afterwards. And maybe after about 6 months, the project got canceled. I didn't,
Right.
just like you said, I didn't put things in a way that these people could understand. And well, I guess we'll never know now. I'm also curious to get your thoughts on this, Bob. There have been many instances in which I've had to give a presentation and other engineers or technical people have to give presentations. But the people in the audience, there's a mix. There's going to be some technical people, there's going to be some business people, there's going to be regulatory quality, everybody in between. So how would you go about presenting to a mixed audience?
I like Team 14971 on the ISO standard for a risk-based approach, and I apply that in different areas. And I say, okay, look at my project and understand where the biggest risk is. Am I at risk at not getting the ROI? Am I at risk at not having something I can build repetitively? Am I at risk of regulatory issues as far as how do we present this in a submission? To understand what the risks are of the product or the project you're working on, and then you want to say, okay, what are the two or three things I want the audience to take away from my presentation, right? What do I need them to understand and in order to make a right decision, in order to move forward or help with escalation and help get it faster. So I think if you do have regulatory risks, say, hey, nobody's ever done this before. We're using a different material for the implant, right? We're using something that has never been done before. So we need to educate the FDA or the regulatory body in our submission of why it's okay and why it's not a problem. And this is the additional information we need to provide that's different than if we were just doing an implantable with with typical titanium or metal casing or housing. So if we understand the risk and identify the top two or three things that we need help from that audience and we need them to understand, then you can design the message to their background, as diverse as it may. So if you were trying to put regulatory risk in terms of the regulatory person to understand, that's great, but you also need to explain or use a metaphor or an example or another project. Remember this project that we had canceled that somebody else ended up launching into the field that had like $1 million worth of revenue every month? That, let's not do that again. And so I got this new project, and it's got whiffs of the issues with this previous project, and somebody else was able to launch it, or eventually we were able to launch it. Let's not repeat those problems we had with that first project for the second project. And so if you put it in terms that they understand and previous experiences, previous projects, as well as previous conversations they may have had with customers, with shareholders, with regulatory agencies, you can put it in terms that they understand and can relate to help them get on the same page. And I do appreciate using video in meetings because you get a chance to read the room. Is somebody really understanding what you're saying? Are they asking questions live? Are they engaged? Or are they falling asleep? You really have to ask them, hey, is this making sense? Is there something else that I can rephrase for you, or give additional information to help you get aligned, or understand the context? Is there more context I can give you to understand the point I'm trying to make here? And it's okay to stop and ask those questions during a presentation. Just take a minute. Let's read the room. Let's see if everybody's on the same page. Does anybody have any questions? There are no stupid questions, because most everybody has the same stupid question saying, "What are you talking about?" So I think you have to make it okay for people in your presentations, even executives. Executives need permission to be able to ask stupid questions, because they're not gonna, they're not gonna add, they'll have smart questions, and they want to make sure they present themselves as being knowledgeable. But I think the brave executives, the brave people in the room, are okay asking stupid questions, because if you don't understand the fundamentals, then you're not engaged, you're not consuming the information, you're not getting what you need to make the right decision. So I think you have to stop and do a gut check with the room.
I think that's really smart. In fact, a couple of years ago, I wrote an article and I was talking about the various reasons why technical people may not want to give presentations, or why they might shy away from it. And one of them was this idea of being in the audience and not wanting to ask that stupid question because you think that it'll call into question your competence.
That's right.
Because a lot of times, as a technical person, we figured we went to engineering school, we have this technical role. It's a role that other people can't do. A lot of times, if you're working in product development as an engineer, you could move into marketing, you could move into sales, but the sales people can't do product development. The marketing people can't do product development. So we have this view of ourselves, and we assume that other people have this view of us too. So if we're in an audience and we have a question and we think it's a very rudimentary question, we might be hesitant to ask it because we think that our sense of self is going to get challenged, or we're going to be seen differently by other people in the audience. And I think you're right that perhaps executives might feel that way too. You're the CTO asking that kind of question. How the hell did you make it this far? So but you essentially you need to work in a culture where asking questions is encouraged. And just like you said, there are no dumb questions, and you're not going to be judged negatively because you asked a question that perhaps you think is simple, but just like you said, other people may very well have that same question.
Yeah, they're going to be relieved that you asked the question because they had the same question. And so I think it just takes guts to ask some of those rudimentary questions, and it gives feedback to the presenters saying, "Oh, hold on a minute. I skipped ahead too far. I got to go back. I got to bring my audience with me." And because it's really important, the story I'm telling them, because I need them to be there with me at the end of the story to make the right decision. And if you lost them along the way, like, okay, who's that character? You're watching a movie, you don't know who the character was before from the previous scene, and it's critical to you come in halfway into the movie, and you lose context of the movie. You're telling a story when you're doing a presentation for a purpose, and you have to bring the audience along for that.
It's so interesting you mentioned the idea of storytelling, Bob. I'm curious to get your thoughts on it then. When it comes to giving a technical presentation, how important is storytelling and how would you suggest a technical person incorporate storytelling into a presentation?
Yeah, I mean, you've got a beginning, you got to set the stage as far as what the scope is. This presentation is not to answer all the questions that you have or solve the world's problems. This presentation is to help us address whether we're making an investment in capital, whether we're making a decision on a project. And this is the information that I'm bringing to the table. So scope it out in the beginning. And then in the middle, tell them what you're going to tell them. And then at the end, after you give them the content in the middle of your presentation, tell them what you told them, right? So you've got to set the stage, you've got to present the data and the context relative to the decision that you're trying to make, and then you have to reframe it at the end, saying and restate it, saying that this is the recommendations the team has. This is the go forward. This is the choice. If you decide to spend the money now, then you've got a certain amount of risk. You've got a certain amount of income that you can make. If you decide to spend the money later, and a lot of these questions come down to money, right? We as engineers keep forgetting that, what's the impact to the business on that side of it. So if you spend it later, then you're going to miss by $10 million in Q1 or some sort of framework that the audience understands. So make sure you keep it simple. You understand. You keep it to two or three different points, and then you set the stage for the information that you give to help the executive make the right decision.
Okay, I'm going to give you a scenario, Bob. I want your thoughts on it. Your CEO went to a conference. He learned about something that is all the rage. It's bleeding edge. It's cutting edge. And he says, "We need this." I'm gonna go to Bob and I'm gonna tell him, "We need this, Bob. How can we get this implemented so that we're number one? Because if we don't have this, we're not number one." So,
Yeah.
what are you telling this CEO to well, what would your response be to the CEO if he came to you and said, "We want to implement this"?
No, I'd be excited about it, right? As an engineer, as a technologist, we're always looking at different solutions and different tools and different ways of using it to find out. But I think we have to walk through experiences of past technology that have dropped in and understand what the failures were of us understanding or moving to it too quickly. Being in the medical device industry, it is risk averse. It's not the quickest industry to adopt new technology that may be adopted in Silicon Valley, right? I can't make changes on the fly. I have to go through regulatory paths. I go through validations, verifications. I have to do clinical trials. So there's a lot of money that goes into verification, validation, and all those steps, biocompatibility, as you might remember. Those are expensive tests to run. Those are expensive, big investment in that. Pharmaceuticals, it takes 10 years to build a new drug or even longer. So they're making big investments. So we can frame it and say we can use this new technology, but we have to step through some learnings. There's a learning curve associated. We need to make sure we have understand what it does and doesn't do so that we can understand the risk of applying that new technology to this new product. We can do it on a trial. We can do a feasibility stage first. You can do a pilot stage a prototype stage next. You can do a pilot build after that. And just to prove the concept and prove that we have the right mitigations to address any new issues that come with that new technology. Because they're going to have different risk associated with the new technology that we don't understand because we haven't used it on different product lines or different products, but we're open to trying it. I'm absolutely open to trying the new technology and advancements, but it's got to be a process because we have to pass regulatory. We want to make sure your investment is well managed and well taken care of, and that we have the right mitigations in place to get the job done without screwing everything up at the end and having to redo everything or go back to an old legacy technology that everybody feels comfortable with. So I think we have to paint that picture, be enthusiastic about it, but at the same time saying, here's some gotchas. We may have to spend some more money or get some more headcount to learn more about these different things that the technology that are unknown to us so that we make sure we don't screw things up.
Yeah. A lot of the people that I have on the podcast, Bob, they don't come from medical devices. So what you're talking about might not be all that of, well, not of interest, but it would be foreign to them.
Yeah.
Because as I said, I also came from medical device, and most of the people that I talk to, they come from tech. So this whole idea of being slow, or things taking time to go from an idea to a product,
Mm.
they're thinking, why does it take so much time? We try something, it fails, we iterate, and when we do it again. But with medical devices, I mean, you're dealing with people's lives. You're dealing, if it's an implantable, you're putting something into somebody. So you
Yeah.
definitely want to make sure that it's efficacious and that it's safe. And just like you're right, I mean, just like you said, I mean, there's verification, or yeah, there's verification, there's validation,
Yeah.
there's clinical trials, or clinical work needs to be done. The regulatory filings, the 510(k)s, the PMA. I mean, what are we able to do? And it's FDA mandated, at
Yeah.
least in the US. I mean, every country has their own, FDA equivalent. So this whole idea of having to go through this process, other people might be hearing this and be like, man, that's a long ass process. But yes, yes, it is. But you would want it to be, if you're on the surgery table getting something put into you, you definitely don't want it to be something that, well, that somebody worked on and iterated really fast and failed and iterated again and failed and iterated again, essentially. And then, you want it to have been something that went through a rigorous process, that's for sure.
Right. Right. And I think that you can draw a lot of parallels in different industries. If you read how the iPhone came about and how much time was spent just on the aesthetics, on the packaging, and a lot of detail. No, it's not right. Do it over again. They spent a lot of money in order to get the aesthetics correct. Which to me in the medical, I'm not as interested in the aesthetics. As long as it works and saves lives, that's the critical side of it. So I think in different industries, automotive industry, you've got safety concerns, aircraft, marine, defense, those have different regulatory requirements as well. So I think even in standard retail, if the customer's not happy, they're not going to buy it, then you've built a product that doesn't work. So I think there's a lot of parallels and not unique to just to the investment the company makes in new products. A medical certainly has its own issues, or they're different than what you may see in different industries. But every industry is more complicated than people give them credit for, and have their own issues to make sure they deliver a product that corrects it. So the more an engineer can understand that framework, the more they can understand the decision need to be made, and what convinces people to invest money in new products, and invest in and have confidence that they're going to launch it and be successful as far as the verification and validation, testing that with retail with buyers, whatever you have to do. I think you have to understand the framework of what you're working in, and how the product you're working on is connected to that and needs to address those issues. Then you can tell that story more completely. So a lot of people wish engineers ran the world and it was all numbers and figures, but it doesn't work that way. People have different feelings and emotions and opinions and thoughts. So it's not all ones and zeros, and we have to address that.
Oh, at 100%.
Yeah.
Bob, I'm also curious to get your thoughts on this too. I mentioned that I had to give presentations in front of management and my project got canceled. And then it was at that point that I thought, this whole presenting in front of people thing, especially decision makers, this is something that I need to get better at, because I want to try to avoid this if at all possible. I want my
Yeah.
projects to go through and to see them in the market and know that I worked on that. That's really cool. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on the idea of what can organizations do to help technical people like myself
Mhm.
communicate better.
Yeah, I think we all have those projects that were canceled that we have scar tissue from, and we go back and revisit over and over again and say, what could we have done differently? I think there's a value to having engineers present items to commercial teams, to the salespeople that actually go and talk to the customers. And if they can ultimately give the value proposition for your product based on what presentation you give, that they can understand what they're telling to the customer, and how they're positioning your product to work for the customer. That's the ultimate goal, right? Because if you can build something that people see value in and sell it, and you can put that presentation together. So it pushes you to understand marketing a little bit, understand what the problems the customers are dealing with and you're trying to solve, and how your product is different than other products. So if you can force an engineer to step in those shoes every once in a while and really defend what's good about the product that they're working on, what does it do differently than other people, how does it solve their problems that nobody's thought of, then that really helped me as far as an aha moment, understand what's the ultimate goal. Because I can make the perfect product in my mind, but if nobody buys it, then it's not going to make any difference. So I think organizations can have their engineers practice more the presentations. What problems are you working on? Why is it important? What's the scope? How did you get to where you got to today? Why are you doing this design of experiments? What's it going to teach us about the product? So the more they can present their ideas to different levels of technical people, including executives, including SMEs or principal engineers, including customers, including commercial, then it really varies, gives your engineer that experience to be able to do a better storytelling that appeals to a wider group and lets them understand. And some products should be canceled, right? You can say that the requirements and everything you gave me and the technology, we've been passed up. There's other competition out there that's better. I've seen that. I walk through Home Depot and I pick up this piece, and it does what we already expect it to do or we're working on doing. So you have to be clear about what the value proposition of what you're working on, so that you don't want to waste your time on a project that doesn't make sense, and at the same time you don't want to waste your project that is perfect, that a lot of, solves a lot of problems that we really need to invest more in, because it's really that significant, and that's where storytelling comes into play.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, Bob. This has been a great conversation. Thanks for being a guest. How can people get in touch with you?
They can contact me through LinkedIn, Robert Hankins, and um, uh, just like you have on this podcast. So really appreciate the opportunity and sharing the experiences, and hopefully it gives people something to think about. So I appreciate the opportunity.
You got it. Well, everyone, that marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And if you want to learn more about that, you can go to teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.